we turn our attention to what might be called the libertarian left, or more popularly, anarchism.
This is the same logic shared by Marx and Freud.
Functioning libertarian socialist institutions, I think they are an interesting model that I think is highly relevant.
Hello, and welcome to Theoryish Season 2, the sequel, the squeakquel.
Paula keeps bringing up the chipheads. It's frightening.
Why shouldn't I? They did some of the best renditions of our modern era. Them and the Glee...
Did they?
Them and the Glee cast. As you can tell, we are starting the season off unhinged.
Yeah, truly. We have tried to record this like 3-4 times.
So if you're tuning in for the first time, hi, hello. My name is Paula Medina Gonzalez.
And I am Hannah Ayres. We'll do a little introduction to ourselves in a second, but just so you know kind of why we're recording this. Last season we did an intro and an outro, and this season we thought it'd be nice to do another intro and outro so you know kind of where we are beginning and end of season. We're recording this the 11th of December, and then the actual episode's going to be out in January, so you're going to be hearing it in January. We have recorded half of the season already. We've got half left to go, so that's kind of where we are mentally.
Yeah. Hence the giggles.
But in terms of like who we both are, yeah, Hannah Ayres, I'm a sociology PhD student at the University of Warwick. I am in my 6th and final year. I'm going to get progressively more unhinged, I think, as I move towards that final year goalpost. My due date is like the end of September, so I think you won't hear most of the intensity.
Yeah, and I'm Paula Medina Gonzalez, and my turn-in date is going to be hopefully December, January of next year. So we're going to get progressively unhinged at different parts of our academic careers, which will be a really nice thing to look back on once that process is over.
Yeah, once we have that behind us. So the podcast, if you haven't heard before, it's called Theoryish. We look at theory in accessible, interesting, and relevant ways. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to make academic theory more relevant and interesting to a wider audience.
Yeah, and we're doing it through the practice of discussion. So a lot of theory does not exist in isolation. Things build up from each other, and in a way, this season, we are building up on things that we learned on the first season, and sort of following through towards the second season, starting to combine a lot of these readings and a lot of these discussions together. Of course, when we are referencing these things, we will include it in the show notes.
Yeah, so most show notes will have like a reading list in the description if you want to find any of the sources we mention. Sometimes it will be just me and Paula. Sometimes we'll have like guests who want to talk about these topics. Sometimes they're experts. Sometimes they're people who are learning along with us.
And at the end of every episode, we like to either use a piece of media or we engage with fan fiction. Our engagement with fan fiction is because a lot of people tend to work out theory, or they tend to express themselves via fan fiction, and we think it's a viable source of media and a good, relatable piece of content for us to sort of walk through at the end of a very theory-heavy session.
So we want to have a little discussion, I guess, of where we are in terms of the podcast. So we started the podcast actually mid last year, so 2022. Yeah. So we started the podcast mid 2022. We were coming up with the ideas. We were starting to prepare things behind the scenes, all the social media, all the visuals that you see. Like, we were prepping all of that. And then we officially launched in January, and our last episode of the season was the end of July. So since then, the podcast has been doing, I want to say, surprisingly well. Like, we thought it would go well whilst the episodes were still coming out because, you know, there's a lot of posting about it on all this kind of stuff. But since then, we've gained more subscribers, we've gained more listeners. When you'll be listening to this, we'll have officially hit 10,000 listens overall, which is like really, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're both actually quite shocked because, as we famously complained throughout season 1, and you will hear throughout season 2, we're unfunded. So this is all made by us two and a lot of work, where Hannah handles the audio editing and a lot of the admin. She's fantastic at it. I handle sort of the big ideas and scrounge things together, as well as all the social media posts and design and Photoshop and all the other little tidbits. So it's a delicate balance of not sleeping.
Yeah, just handing off who sleeps, who doesn't get to sleep.
But speaking of social media, it was really great to see us be in people's top Spotify Wraps this year.
Yeah, so just for clarity, our podcast is in lots of different places, but primarily our listeners are on Spotify. So I think about 70 to 75%, it does fluctuate, of our listeners are on Spotify. So if you have Spotify, you get Spotify Wrapped as a listener, but you also, as an artist and a podcaster, you also get a Spotify Wrapped. So we had, I think it was like 60 plus people, we were their top podcast, and then I think it was like 100 and something, we're in their top 5, and then it was like 700 and something, we're in the top 10.
It was very sweet, and then some of these people were our friends, so it's nice that they even listen to what we have to say without us being in front of them. Amazing.
Yeah, another thing that has happened since last season is we were invited to do a live episode. Hopefully that will be available to you. We're hoping to do it as the teaser, so hopefully that is available to you. It's a video podcast, so if it's not working on Spotify, you can go over to YouTube, look at the video. It was really fancy.
Yeah, so we were invited by Luke Robert Mason to do this sort of mini episode centered around intelligence, design, and specifically artificial intelligence. So we were kind of out of our wheelhouse since it was a very science-heavy topic, and a lot of the presenters around us were either in fields of science or operated in very interesting levels of design, and we were, one, the only 2 PhD students, and then 2, the ones that are not in design at all. But it was really interesting to like sort of be working alongside people that were doing very heavy science or were very established already in their careers. So it was a really great opportunity, and we got to meet some people that actually listen to the podcast.
Yeah, it was so cute. Oh my god, it was so cute. So shout out to those people because they will actually know who they are.
And by the way, you had fantastic nails.
Yeah, if you're listening. So we have spoken about doing live episodes before. We don't know when or if we will do one in the future, but this was a real good test to see if it even worked, and it really did. So stay tuned, maybe. And we also, hopefully, we're going to start trialing a Discord server. So if you don't know what Discord is, essentially think of like kind of old school chat rooms, but a bit more, it works better.
It's a lot more organized, and currently I'm setting it up. I'm also setting up some age restrictions because we wanted to make it a safe space, and that includes, unfortunately, having to exclude anyone under the age of 18 just for security reasons. Neither Hannah or I feel comfortable including minors into spaces where adults could be in. So if you are a younger subscriber, I'm so sorry. We cannot wait to see you when you're 18.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you can't listen to the podcast. It just means that you can't be involved in Discord and stuff like that.
For our podcast, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know your life. We don't know your rules.
And so we're going to be trialing it out. It might work. It might not work. It really just depends. But we wanted a better way to cultivate a sense of community with the audience, because you have things like Twitter and Instagram and stuff, but essentially those are borrowed audiences because they aren't directly, you can't directly really engage. You have to just engage when it pops up on their feed. Also, they have notifications. So we're going to trial that out. We'll see how it works. It might not do.
And changing into the season, we want to conclude with somewhat a couple changes to our current structure. So this season, we are trying out shorter episodes because we notice a lot of people especially our guests, also tended to get quite tired once we hit like hour 1, hour 2.
Sometimes hour 3.
Oh my God, infamously, there was 3-hour podcast recording. It was fantastic, but that was exhausting.
Yeah, so we're going to do shorter episodes, especially when it's just me and Paula. It also helps in terms of like producing the episodes quicker. It's quicker to edit, it's quicker to prep for, because we don't have to try and fill like 2 hours, even though we could, let's be honest. So this season, we've got some really interesting episodes coming up. So we're going to begin with some recognizable theorists. So we're beginning with like Benjamin and Epistemology of the Closet Part 2, because famously Paula's friend came up and was like, where's Part 2? You finished the season.
This person came up to me with me already a couple drinks in at a party. It's like, where's part 2? And I was shook.
Literally. So we're doing it specifically for that person. And also you, if you really wanted that part 2. Yeah, we're doing the part 2. Benjamin wasn't originally supposed to be first, but because of logistical reasons, we're starting with Benjamin. All roads lead back to Benjamin.
All arcades lead back to Benjamin. And you haven't read Arcades yet, so you don't find it as funny as I do. We're also looking at a bit more experimental text. So last season, I felt that I wanted to talk a bit more about art history. So this season, we're including a couple art history essays, mostly because of me. It's my own selfish little thing that I want to do. We also wanted to include older texts and older pieces of theory because we accidentally sort of stuck to the 20th, 21st century last season, so we're trying to pull back a little bit more and explore other options.
Yeah, we're also trying to explore theory, I guess, that's a bit more out of our wheelhouse. Our last season ended up like very much straying around gender, race, sexuality, especially stuff to do with queer theory, which is all really great, but we kind of wanted to give a broader scope of some theory, so we enlisted some help with our guests.
And last but not least, we're doing 2 episodes on introductions to theoretical movements. We're doing introduction to post-structuralism and an introduction to intersectionality. 2 of these were held as a vote on our Spotify, and rather than choose one, we chose 2.
They both got the same amount of votes, so we were like, you know, people really like the introduction to queer theory, so hopefully this will also be really interesting. We've also managed to get another interview with an author, like what we did with Jennifer V. Evans. We're doing another one of those, and it's a really great guest.
I know, I'm so excited.
Or guests, we don't know yet.
It might be 1, it might be 2. I think with this, we can close the introduction.
Yeah, we'll see you in the rest of the season.
Ooh,
bye.
Squeakle.
Thank you so much for listening to Theoryish. We really appreciate it and would love to hear your thoughts. Check out our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter at Theoryish_pod for up-to-date information, and please rate, follow, and leave a review wherever you're listening to the podcast.
If you're interested in finding anything we have mentioned in the episode, please check our show notes or description to find more details. You can also contact us at theoryishpodcast@gmail.com.
See you next time.
Goodbye.